people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. We now know a little bit more about the upcoming Stephanie Hahn versus Holly Holm rematch and what's set to happen on that undercard. Which other of MVP's Valkyries are set to appear on that undercard? And it would appear that unbeaten up-and-comer from the West Coast, Iana Verduzco, is set to make her MVP debut against an opponent that has yet to be announced, sporting an unblemished record of 7 wins with no losses and 1 recorded knockout. Iana, she's 24 years old, campaigns in the super bantamweight division, where currently Ali Scottney reigns as that division's undisputed champion. But of course, we all know that Ali Scottney has all but announced that she'll be leaving that weight class. She'll be moving up. When she does, all the titles she won will be redistributed, at which point Iana and Nazarena Romero will be able to pick one up. I wasn't aware that MVP had anything going with Nazarena Romero, the former WBA Super Bantamweight champion, hard-punching Argentine slugger that, with MVP in her corner, could very well see herself become a Super Bantamweight champion again at featherweight. Reina Tellez, who boxed against Amanda Serrano earlier this year and gave a fantastic account of herself, she will be making her MVP debut as an MVP fighter. She was just an opponent before. They're promoting her now. She'll be boxing against an opponent that has yet to be announced with MVP in her corner. It's conceivable that she also could see herself fighting for a belt in the not-so-distant future after Amanda Serrano retires, because remember, she still has 2 alphabet titles, and she also will be boxing on this undercard in the co-main event. In the main event, you've got Stephanie Hahn, you've got Holly Holm, and nothing against those 2 fighters, but I'm actually more excited about what's on the undercard than what's in the main event, because in their initial outing, it was a sad display. Holly Holm very much looked like Father Time had caught up to her. She looked slow and more than a half step behind. So I expect the second fight to go just like the first one did, where Stephanie Hahn is a bit too fresh, a bit too sharp, and a bit too much for the aging Hall of Famer. I expect her to win another points decision, and I expect her to keep her WBA title. Set to go down at the very end of this month on the 30th on ESPN Linear, not to be confused with ESPN Plus. I'm a fan of MVP and everything they've been doing, but I have to be honest that I'm not a fan of how they're distributing their cards on this platform. It creates confusion that you have to have ESPN Linear for this card, but you have to have ESPN Plus for the O'Shea Jones fight a little later on. That's the way it's been. For Harper versus Dubois, you had to have ESPN Plus, but for Baumgartner versus Shin, you had to have ESPN Linear. And for this card, it's also on Linear. I think that's going to confuse people. And with basic cable packages not being what they once were, I don't actually know how many Americans out there still have ESPN Linear and how many still have ESPN Plus, and how many of them are boxing fans. Because a boxing fan wouldn't have actually had much reason to keep ESPN Plus after Top Rank left the platform. In between the time that the Top Rank deal ended in the summer of last year and the time that the MVP deal started in this one, a boxing fan might have unsubscribed. So that when you spread out the content like this, it can confuse what existing boxing fans are still there, and it is a bit hard to imagine that there are very many. I'm looking forward to this card, but it's a little hard to imagine that I'm going to resubscribe to the Plus just for the O'Shea Jones fight, not knowing what other cards are even going to end up there on the Plus. Men's Super Bantamweight news. Preliminary reports indicate Inoue versus Nakatani had an estimated 55,000 in attendance with a gate of $32 million, making it the 4th highest gate in the history of boxing. You heard that right. the fourth highest gate in the history of boxing. This comes to us from a super bantamweight, which makes it all the more unprecedented because the lower weights don't normally yield this kind of turnout, this kind of fanfare, let alone this kind of revenue. Though, of course, don't expect many of the boxing scribes in the United States and the content creators to make light of this because it goes against the narrative. It goes against the narrative that Inoue should have to fight in the United States, and it goes against the narrative that this is still the mecca of boxing, that this is where the big money is made. For a perspective, Inoue versus Nakatani replaced Canelo versus Golovkin. Canelo versus Golovkin came in at about 27.1 million at the gate, whereas Inoue's fight brought in well over that with 32. And you're telling me that he has to fight here? Why? This isn't even the first time he would have put 55,000 asses in 55,000 seats. He did that with Luis Neri, didn't he? And as stated, don't expect the American content creators and some of the boxing scribes to make light of this because it goes against the narrative that this is the mecca of boxing or that Inoue has to fight here. Not only that, but that David Benavidez has now become the face of boxing with his victory over Zurdo Ramirez this past weekend. That's not what the numbers show. And I said it in my recent live stream, that I did live streams for both Inoue's fight and David's fight. And not only did I bring in bigger numbers with Inoue's fight, so what the algorithm shows is that the ads for Inoue's fight kicked out more cash than the ads for David's fight. So it was, in fact, the bigger event, the bigger fight overall. So how could he be the face of boxing if there's a little Japanese guy out there generating more money, more interest, and more fanfare than David? Adding insult to injury, per multiple people who attended Benavidez versus Zurdo in person at the T-Mobile Arena, the venue was actually half empty. 100 and 200 level sections were curtained off. It stands to reason that if you could have sold those seats, you would have sold those seats. If you were anticipating that kind of a turnout for David Benavidez's fight, you would have opened up those sections. But because he doesn't really draw like that, you knew that you wouldn't have to, that David is not in the United States what Inoue is in Japan. He's not generating anywhere near here what Inoue's generating over there. So, how could he be the face of boxing? He's not. It's what I told you in my previous video. They're slapping all these labels on this guy, that he's the Mexican monster when he's not actually Mexican or even known among Mexicans. Not according to Chavez, and he would know. That he is all of a sudden this boogeyman that nobody wants any parts of, while both Artur Beterbiev and Jai Opataya have been calling him out. And that he's all of a sudden the face of boxing, even though there are several other fighters out there that are generating more money and more interest with their fights than he is with his. All these meaningless labels to manufacture a face of boxing. When you ain't the ones that decide that, you know. It's the fans. It has to happen organically, or it just doesn't happen. I came to the conclusion in my most recent live stream that the American boxing scene as a whole, and the media within it, many of them, not everybody, but a good number of individuals, they're actually bad for the sport of boxing. They're detrimental to the sport's growth, to the sport's profile, because they don't cover it evenly. Boxing does not get the coverage in the United States that other sports do, like the NBA or the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, to where you have to stick to the facts and stats. You have to. Otherwise, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. There's no organized sport more than the sport of boxing that tries to get away from being a sport to try to be something else. Because the people in America, they don't seem to want sport. They don't want athletes. They want characters. And they don't want sport more than they want stories, narratives. And if you interrupt those narratives with the truth, you're the bad guy. Don't let a little $32 million gate from a couple of super bantamweights get in the way of David Benavidez being the face of boxing. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good narrative. That's how the media works in the United States. They don't cover the sport evenly while exhibiting a gross partiality towards all things American. They're more focused on rubbing elbows with the boxers and palling around with the boxers than covering the sport the way it is, telling the truth. And it's for this reason I've come to the conclusion that America's bad for boxing. I mean, just some members of the media, definitely a lot of the content creators, they ain't good for nothing. You know, in the UK, you've got guys like Hideo Oladipo, Charlie Parsons, Rob Tebbett. These are serious people.
Coogan Cassius.
You don't see this abundance of clowns over there running around, these wannabe social media influencers.
These anglers.
Who aren't journalists. They're not pundits, and that's all right, but they're not analyzing the sport of boxing either. They're more like shock jocks.
Wannabe influencers.
Capitalizing off of sensationalist headlines and hot takes that seldom ever seem to pan out, all geared towards eliciting reactions, because it's not their aim to analyze the sport of boxing and help you understand it. They just want to move the needle, saying whatever they can, wherever they can, no matter how silly it is.
They're wannabe influencers.
So when I think about Inoue bringing in the 4th highest gate, being a super bantamweight, that's unprecedented, because no super bantamweight before him ever generated this kind of fanfare and this kind of revenue.
Nobody.
And I don't expect the American content creators and some members of the media to make light of how monumental that truly is. They're gonna gloss over it like it's a passing thought, like they do with so much of Inoue's facts and stats and accomplishments in the sport of boxing, his contributions and all the history that he's been making. They treat it like it's just a passing thought while glazing David Benavidez.
Really, any souped-up American hype job.
For doing what? For pouncing on opponents you already knew they were gonna beat. You got a lot of guys in my comment section begging me to give David Benavidez his flowers. I'm wondering, are they giving Inoue his?
You want an example of what I'm talking about? Here's an example. Veteran boxing scribe Sean Zattel described Inoue versus Nakatani as anticlimactic,
underwhelming, but high-level fight. Inoue got the job done. Nakatani's length and power forced him to be more cautious. Some tense moments down the stretch. Nakatani rallied in rounds 9 and 10, but Inoue sealed it with the uppercuts in the 11th. In his words, anticlimactic and underwhelming.
This from the same guy who creams himself whenever a slick American fighter shoots a jab?
Didn't this guy write like a poem or something about how the American style is the best style because of all the little kids in the ghetto?
He's trying to get invited to that cookout.
It's sort of a deep resentment that they harbor towards Inoue, that he's made it this far and made all this history without pandering to the Americans, without having to bow down to them.
Not just amongst the fans and the content creators, but among the fighters too.
Some BS, man.
It's
some BS.
Okay, let's start with the monster at number 1. We've already kind of had this conversation. Teo says yes to the monster at 1. What do you say, Shady?
I'll say yes.
Yes. You say still Usyk?
I think Usyk.
I agree with Usyk. We're split, but the ring has Inoue won over Usyk.
Where's he go from here?
Usyk?
Yeah, because if Inoue just fought for one of the best Japanese fighters of all time, right?
Yep.
And he beat him unanimously.
Yep.
Now, where's Usyk go from here? Who's he fight next to give it the same?
If I had my dream list, I would say Atama.
He ain't gonna fight him right now.
He's just.
Benavidez. Caballero.
But I agree with the pound for pound list, the updated one.
You agree with the updated
Think
one?
about number 8. We haven't seen you fight since what? November?
Okay, but if you think about it like this, Nakatani, the guy that he suffered, I mean, he had a hard fight with the guy he fought last.
Yes, he did.
I don't know, was it Hernandez? Was it
Hernandez.
Hernandez? We don't even know him. We don't even know that guy, right? Do you know him?
He's
Say again?
The guy that Nakatani fought before anyway.
But
like
no
that.
matter what, he had to go up in weight, and he let go and vacated his Ring Magazine title at 118 to move up and to face Inoue.
If that was the case, I should be Ring Magazine champion because I went and beat the number 1 guy. They
Not
said
exact. There's a logic why that doesn't work.
For me to
actually,
become Ring Magazine champion at 147, I got to go fight.
When are we gonna
Brian
get
Norman
you
again.
unifying? We need
yes,
you
I see why you, from your point of view, it's
For
like,
me to
come
be
on.
Ring
But
Magazine champion, I would have to go fight Brian Norman again.
Kid's deluded. He's delusional. And this is how the American boxer's mind works. He actually believes that by beating George Kambosos, Regis Prograis, victories that have not aged well,
In performances that were really nothing to write home about.
and Brian Norman, this puts you on par with the monster? Anecdotally, you don't stop anybody in the street, show them a Devin Haney fight, and make them a boxing fan. Make a fan out of them. If anything, they're gonna get angry at you that you wasted their time, and then they're gonna think something's wrong with you, because this is what you're doing on your Saturday night? Watching Devin Haney fights?
Holy shit.
Get a clue. At the most, you beat 3 reigning champions at the most, whereas I think Inoue's up to 8 or 9 now. 8 or 9 across 4 weight classes. That's more than you, Devin.
2 of which he was an undisputed champion. I mean, that's your claim to fame, the cherry on top of your resume, that you were undisputed at lightweight. And who did you beat to do it?
Fucking George Kambosos. He had to fight one guy for all those belts, and the guy he fought wasn't even that good.
So just for argument's sake, let's qualify it. Congratulations, you've been undisputed. Inoue's done that 2 times.
There is no area, no quantifiable metric where Devin Haney matches or surpasses Inoue's body of work so far. He hasn't taken more belts from more belt holders, he hasn't been a champion in more weights, and he hasn't been undisputed more times. Anecdotally, he's not doing in America what Inoue's doing in Japan. Devin ain't making history over here.
There ain't no fight you do for Devin Haney in anybody's stadium where you're gonna fill it up, where you're gonna get 55,000 people to come. It simply doesn't happen.
But this is the guy that wonders why Inoue's at number 1.
Oh, because it ought to be you?
You know, I could stop somebody in the street.
Yeah.
Show him your average, no, your Inoue fight. Make a boxing fan out of them, because this guy...
Fuck guy.
This guy's like something out of an anime or something, like Hajime Ippo.
Ippo.
Special. He's a once-in-a-lifetime fighter, is what he is. What he's doing for the lower weights, what he's doing, has never been done before, whereas Devin is just another carbon copy, another Mayweather wannabe.
The kind of guy the American boxing media likes to put on a pedestal.
How many times have you seen Devin Haney go out there, lay a fucking egg, in what are his anticlimactic fights? I'm telling you, you don't show nobody in the street. You don't stop nobody. Show him a Devin Haney fight and make him a boxing fan.
Want to get cursed out?
And so I think that the American boxing scene has become a detriment to the sport as a whole, the sport's profile. Fighters like Devin are why? Overpaid.
With an overinflated sense of self.
You can't get these fucking guys to do nothing, and when they finally do something, it's fucking boring!
You gotta pay these guys a fortune to do anything, so that when they do something, I'm telling you, you ain't gonna make no boxing fans with Devin Haney fights.
The fighters themselves are self-important, entitled, they don't want to do anything. The pundits and the content creators that cover the sport, they don't cover it evenly.
Wearing their hearts on their sleeves, and what is their partiality.
And the general xenophobia that you find in the American boxing scene that seems to want to downplay bigger events and bigger names, bigger gates, bigger fanfare all around the world for the abysmal turnout the average American boxer has. What American boxer is getting what Inoue is getting?
Show me somebody.
If this is the mecca of boxing and where the big bucks are made, then show me the American boxer that's making what Inoue is making.
You can.
Person doesn't exist. The only guy in America whose numbers can match and surpass Inoue's is Canelo. But of course, he's not American.
So miss me with the bullshit.